It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman. You can find me at Opperman Investigations and Digital Forensic Consulting. If you just email me at oppermaninvestigations@gmail.com. Now, if you like our show, be sure to check out our Patreon, the Opperman Report Patreon. Everything you hear Monday to Friday on AM/FM radio, you can find over at Patreon with the ads and the commercials cut out. Plus, I got up there 700 pages. It's not exclusive, but it's new. 700 new document done from the FBI about the Franklin cover-up. We just got that. So that's up there, too, as well. Plus, you know, all the Trump litigation. I pretty much put everything up you could find about him there, too. Our archives are free. Go to Spreaker.com. Every Friday night, I do a live show at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. There's a chat room, and you get an email notification when we put up new content. As a matter of fact, if you go either to my Patreon or to my Spreaker, there's an interview I did with two very funny comedians, J.T. Kelly and Sam Castillo. And they interviewed me. And I got to tell you something, too. I didn't even mention this to these guys. But when I listened to the interview, they had said some really, really kind things about me before the interview started. So I really want to thank you guys for that. But we have J.T. Kelly, God's favorite comedian on Instagram. The podcast is called Bad News Podcast. It's on Spotify. It's on YouTube. Every Monday, they come up with new content. Sam Castillo Comedy on Instagram. And you can meet these guys in person. They're both in Austin, Texas, right? And they're at competing comedy clubs on September 18th. JT is over at East Austin Comedy, and or it might be the other way around. And one of them is at the Creek and Cave in Austin. Mr. JT Kelly, are you there?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Hey, man, so good to hear from you. Remind the audience, who is JT Kelly?
Well, I am a stand-up comedian in Austin, Texas. I co-host a show with Sam at the Creek and Cave studio where we talk about the news, the parapolitical, conspiracy, not in the level that you do with investigators, but really a little bit more tongue-in-cheek, kind of talking about the things that we're both interested in. And we are rooting on that to get some more listeners to try to get more people out to these local comedy shows.
Yeah, and JT has his Instagram, that God's favorite comedian, and he plays clips of his comedy all the time. And sometimes you wear one of those little wool caps like Tim Pool, right?
Mm-hmm, I do, exactly. Exactly. I like to think of like he's the Wario of me, you know?
Yeah, but not all the time, because you actually have hair, right?
Tim Pool, Gavin McInnes, they all just tried to be comedians and couldn't. So that's unfortunately what I fear my future looks like, you know? Wearing a Tim cap and standing behind the little mic saying crazy stuff like those fellas.
Now, on September 18th, which one of these clubs are you going to be at?
I'll be at the Creek and Cave for the Litty Titty Comedy Show. Gotcha.
In Creek and Cave in Austin, Texas, September 18th. Now, Mr. Sam Castillo, are you there?
Hi, Ed. I'm here.
Hey, how are you, bro? Okay, now you're going to be at the other one, at the East Austin Comedy Club there on September 18th. So tell the audience, who is Sam Castillo?
I'm a Austin, Texas stand-up comedian. I've known JT since I started probably about 7 years ago, and I've been starting to slowly be able to tour across the country, and I have a show that I run twice a month at East Austin Comedy Club where I run about like 25 minutes of new material every time, and it's a blast. It's at Cold Brew Comedy on Instagram is like the name of the show, and yeah, we have a podcast. It's at Bad News Pod. Just like JT said, we just try to like make everything that is like dark and naturally unfunny funny.
Mm. And so how long have you guys been doing comedy?
I've been at it for about 6-7 years, and JT's been at it since a little longer than me. I know he started in Sacramento.
I think something like 15 years, like 2010, 2011, something like that. Crazy, right? I think 13, 14 years.
Yeah, who can believe that 2010 was 15 years ago?
I know. I started under the Obama regime.
Yeah, right? Okay. So now, you guys interviewed me on your show there. What kind of stuff do you have there on that Bad News podcast when you don't have Ed Opperman on there?
Man, I was telling you before we started, my favorite episode recently is we talked about the Black Israelites and kind of our experiences and what we've learned they believed. But because of the exposure it got on Instagram, some Black Israelites reached out and said they want to be on the show. So I got some Black Israelite shirts for us and some headgear, and we're going to have them on and learn a little bit, see if Sam and I can join up, see if they'll let us join up. And that's what we're most excited about right now, because they have a very interesting philosophy and a pretty interesting lifestyle out there street preaching.
Oh, yeah, very, very aggressive out there on the street. But I don't think you guys are going to pass the litmus test to become a Black.
There's actually I swear to God this is true. There's a small group in Austin that believes that Irish people are also Israelites. And I said, oh, that's my in. I have Irish ancestry. And so there is actually a small group of Black Hebrew Israelites that allow the Irish people to join their ranks, which is probably the funniest. They're probably the most outcast of their group.
The Palestine of Europe.
So the reason why I invited you guys to come on the show is when you were interviewing me toward the end of the show, you told me about this crazy local story about this fellow who walked into a club and shot himself. He was connected to the Clintons. I believe he was an FBI agent or some type of a investment banker type. Who wants to get started on that story?
Yeah, I mean, that's actually the reason Sam and I started doing the podcast, is because we were talking about this story, and it's something that kind of checks all the boxes for guys like us, right? FBI, conspiracy, the Clintons, cover-up, and it was local to us. I worked at bars at the time, so I had people that I would talk to that were either there or knew people that were there. So we both kind of became obsessed with this story, because I can kind of start breaking it down for you. It happened in 2019. But in July of 2019, there was a guy named Sal Cincinnati, and he went into Container Bar, a bar in Austin, Texas, and shot himself in the head. And then the entire bar was shut down. And reports say people had their phones taken. It was just a whole conspiratorial mess. But then no news covered it. Even for a while, his obituary was hard to find online. And this was a guy, from all reports of everything that I've seen, just had a family that he loved back in his hometown. And he was an agent for like 10 years or something like that. But yeah, it's a crazy story. I don't know if you've heard about this other than from us.
No, only from you. That's why I called you up to come on the show. Now, you said you knew people who were there at that club that night. Did they tell you their phones were taken?
So I have met at least one person who has said, and it's so hard to tell with people that work at bars and go to bars, and so you kind of have to take it with a grain of salt. I have personally met at least one person that said, oh, I was there. They told us not to say anything online and checked on our phones to make sure we didn't have any footage or anything. And have you heard similar reports from anyone in person or at least online or anything like Facebook?
Yeah, it's unfortunately the bar closed 2 years ago. So I was, would be great if we could go down there and ask them, any, employees, if they were there present that night. I remember, like, on the Austin subreddit that week, everyone was, talking about, like, it's a very popular place down here to go. And the fact that, like, there are witnesses that he was shot, that it wasn't a suicide. There are some people who said it was a suicide. There are witnesses who said that, like, a bunch of FBI agents actually, like, were dressed as staff of the bar and then undressed to show vests and jackets with the classic yellow and blue FBI lettering, and that's when he killed himself. The main thing is that, like, the police swept everyone's phones. There are multiple accounts from people in person, online, and from the police took people's phones and or like erased all photos that they had and had them sign non-disclosure agreements about it.
And another thing is that people that have worked at the police department have said, not only to early reporters and people that are trying to get info on it, but have said online on their own personal social media accounts that the FBI said not to talk about this. And all the reports online, specifically from like the New York Post or from the Daily Mail, they're saying that the FBI is saying that Sal Cincinnati was in town for an FBI training, and that's why there were other FBI agents in the bar. But then all the reports from witnesses say more things like, oh, no, it was the bartender who, in the same way that Superman reveals the S on his chest, revealed that he had FBI on his vest and came around the counter, and that there was actually, some sort of foot chase that led them into Container Bar, and he wasn't just out there celebrating. And if you look at the Facebook post about this guy Sal afterwards that his friends are posting, this wasn't like an isolated sicko with no friends. This was a guy that taught children's martial arts for 30 years. This was a guy that had a family and was standing in a long community. Like, you never know who's going to kill themselves, so I'm not trying to speculate on, if he killed himself or if he got shot. But all the reports make it so curious that it's not just some sort of, straight cut black and white situation where a guy committed suicide, because there's no reasons been released. There's been no reporting on what's going on with him. And this guy investigated financial crimes. He was a Wall Street banker that Reuters wrote about in 2010 because he went straight from Wall Street banking to work to the FBI. His claim is that he spoke money language, right? His claim is like, the reason I want to go from Wall Street banking to the FBI was because I understand money in a really in-depth way.
Yeah, he had a degree from NYU in quantitative financing, which I'm not sure that was even a type of finance until we started looking into this guy.
Yeah, so it's like scientific financing, right? What is that?
Right. Really what he was doing in the early 2010s, the article that he gave the Washington Post was that, and Reuters, quoted in both of them, that he was looking into CDOs, which was all the rage in the late thousands and early tens, the collateralized debt obligations that were were collecting subprime mortgages that led to the 2008 financial crisis. And so he was one of many people in the FBI who was trying to figure out, like, how do we prevent another recession? And I guess over the time that he was there, he started looking into more and more and bigger cases. There was I don't have the article in front of me, unfortunately. My internet's not working right now. But there was statements that he did look into the Clinton Foundation, not at the Clintons personally, but the foundation itself was accused of mishandling money, which most nonprofits are. That's not unique to any nonprofit. But the fact that it is associated with the Clintons, and it being that he killed himself in 2019, and that is similar to the time that Jeffrey Epstein maybe not killed himself, it did raise a lot of red flags for people.
That's interesting. Did you guys know that I'm the one who obtained that 24-page letter written by Jerry Lefcourt, who was Abby Hoffman's lawyer at one point, but then he became Jeffrey Epstein's lawyer. And during their plea negotiations, he had sent a letter to the prosecutor saying, my client, Jeffrey Epstein, is such a great guy. Look at this work he did helping to create the Clinton Foundation. He helped create this huge international charity. Is a wonderful guy.
Oh, wow. That's crazy that there's been letters specifically in the courts tying Epstein and Clinton together on an international level. That should be headline news, right?
Well, yeah, you think it would. Now, when I got a hold of that, I sold it for $1.99 on my old website. I can't remember section. It's up on the Patreon now. But after, I forget what was the real tipping point, either when Epstein got arrested or when he got killed. That's when my phone was just ringing off the hook like crazy. Everybody was contacting me, BBC, and all these guys were going to my website buying that letter. It's a 24-page letter. So anytime you see it since then, they got it from me.
Nice. And for those of you that don't subscribe to the Opperman on Patreon, you are missing out. The files on there, the info that he has posted, incredible.
Yeah, we do have a lot of good stuff on there. So now, see, do we know for a fact he was investigating the Clinton Foundation?
No, and that's kind of hard to prove, in my opinion. The FBI hasn't said that directly, but enough you don't know if it's just people online spreading misinformation or people that are, actually know him in real life. But really early on in 2019, that's just what a lot of stuff online said. A lot of the people that reported it first, like the first people to do news on this wasn't like some sort of CNN or New York Post. It was some local guy called like True Patriot News or something like that. But the thing about that guy is he said, oh, this seems like, it's added to the Clinton body count. And that seems like such an untrustworthy, crazy thing to say. It's just some guy with a news site. But at the same time, he was literally the first person to report about what should be a pretty crazy big story. Even if it is just a very straightforward, hey, this FBI agent, while in town for training, killed himself in front of his friends and the public, that should be huge news, even if that's exactly what happened. But the fact that it seems like news was suppressed about it, and the first person to talk about it is one of those people that will just say, oh, this FBI agent must have been muddying, doing something shady with the Clinton org.
Right.
It's hard to just discount that, because it's like, well, you were the first guy to talk about this.
Yeah, those right-wing guys are obsessed with the Clintons, man. They can't get over that. But now, have you talked to this guy, this Patriot blogger? Have you made contact with him and says, hey, where'd you get this information from?
I have not. That'd probably be a good move.
Oh, absolutely.
Another person that's really shut off to talking is, I think her name's Bridget Dunlap. Is that the woman that owns Container Bar? The lady that first... Rainy Street in general, where the guy shot himself, is a pretty politically contentious area anyways, because it used to be like a working-class Mexican community. As the houses got older, people moved out, and then developers moved in pretty quickly because of its adjacency to downtown Austin. So even starting bars there was kind of like a big, there were community groups that protested it at the time in the early 2000s and stuff like that. So when things like that occur in areas like that, it kind of just begs the question, okay, do these developers have any type of intelligence connection? Why was this area? Why did this happen here? Why did this happen here specifically in Rainy Street? What type of training do FBI guys do in Austin? I don't even know what they're doing here.
And if it was a suicide, what would motivate him to walk into this Container Bar and do it there? Why wouldn't you do it back at your hotel room, when there's not a big scene where someone's not going to try and pull a gun out of your hand,
Really, though? I mean, especially when you see or talk about the reports where there's some sort of foot chase that led them into Container Bar, it kind of paints a different picture as to what actually happened. And I mean, in 2019, there should be blink cameras and security footage and bar security footage. There just isn't. There's no info on this. The big goal that Sam and I had in starting the podcast was we were like, we'd love to create, on like a Patreon or something similar, a way for people to fund a private investigator in Austin just to look into this and to track every lead and to find footage, because the fact that a journalist hasn't done this yet is just crazy to me. Even if it is just a very straightforward, through a series of crazy events, this FBI agent who investigates, high-level financial crimes killed himself in public in front of other FBI agents. Even if that's what happened, I would like to know. I would like to know the full story and a bigger picture as to this event that happened in my hometown.
Yeah, it would seem that even as podcasters that you guys could send a letter to the public information officer at the police department there in that precinct and say, hey, what kind of reports do you have on this night? And then send a similar letter to the FBI too, saying, hey, what kind of reports do you have on this? They'll probably turn you down. You can go back with a Freedom of Information Act.
That's what Muckrock did.
Oh, about this?
Yeah.
They did Freedom of Information Acts with the Austin Police Department and the FBI, and both were basically politely told to leave us alone. We're not answering anything.
What's even crazier is you can look on Austin, the APD's site and the County Travis sites and find cases, and you can find police reports. But there's nothing. It's a black hole. And again, I mean, that doesn't necessarily mean that there's some sort of bigger conspiracy. It very much could be this was an FBI agent. If you're in the FBI, you can pretty much tell a local police officer, hey, don't make a report. I'm in the FBI. And I imagine they would. Just on a person-to-person level, they go, yeah, this guy's a Fed. I'll just do what he says. I'm a cop. So, I mean, even if it's just as innocent as that, I want to know. I doubt it is as innocent as that. I imagine there is a bigger story and a bigger picture here. But I mean, anything beyond what we see in the news that's already been reported and from talking to people in person would just be a guess. It's so hard to tell what's going on when there's no information about it, and all the information that you can see is just so heavily suppressed. Well,
I got to tell you this. Back in the old days, that would definitely happen, okay, where a Fed would tell a New York cop, okay, listen, this never happened. I'm leaving. Okay. But nowadays, whoever the first responding cop on that scene, he's going to have to make a report no matter what, because it's a dead body. It's going to be leaving. And there's lawsuits and stuff like that. So there's definitely has to be reports. There's no doubt about that. Couple of questions. This Sal Cincinnati, how do you pronounce the last name again? Cincinnati?
Yes, sir. Cincinnati.
Okay. where did he live before he traveled to Austin?
He was living in Washington, D.C. With the it was the Manipulative and Market Manipulation and Future Trade Commission of the FBI. Basically just looking at high-level financial crimes office of the FBI. Before that, he was working with the FBI in the Southern District of New York.
Gotcha. Okay, New York and D.C. And now, allegedly he went to Austin for some kind of training?
Yes, with a few other FBI agents.
Really? Because would there be some kind of financial training in Austin?
I don't know. I can't imagine there being so. It's not a financial hub.
My understanding,
but not a financial
as
hub.
far as the FBI is concerned, is they only have what are they called? Auxiliary field offices or whatever they are, the small ones in Austin, and the closest big one is San Antonio.
Correct. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Definitely.
Like if you're an FBI agent in Austin, it's like you're in a hotel room. You're going to go and work at an office in San Antonio if you actually work at an office.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe there's far more stand-up comedians in Austin than there are FBI out there.
I sure hope so.
Yeah, I'm sure there is, man. I'm convinced. Austin's a pretty cool town. Okay, so guy lives in D.C. He's from New York, but he's going to Austin somehow. Now, when he enters into the bar, there's two stories. One is either he was chased in or that he walked in by himself, right?
There's technically three stories, right?
Okay.
There's the official story, which was that he was bar hopping with the FBI agents and they all walked in together. And then there's that they chased him in, and then there's that he was there completely alone and the FBI agents were there as some sort of sting.
But it's his own gun? We don't even know, right, if it's his own gun that shot him or not, do we?
No, we don't know. And any of the reports that we can find, it has the caliber listed or any details on the gun itself. The deepest article that I can find that keeps getting quoted by everyone else is on truthpundit.com, written by Thomas Paine.
That's the guy that reported it first. He was reporting it on 2 days after the event.
So the next person we'll have to reach out to, since Muckrock did file, FOIA's Freedom of Information Acts, we'll have to reach out ourselves to Thomas Paine and APD ourselves too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've actually heard of those guys, Thomas Paine and Truth Pundit. Now, what about his family? He left behind a family, right?
Oh, man.
So that is the next detail that makes the story more interesting. He did have a family of his own. What makes him interesting is he is a third-generation law enforcement. So his father and grandfather were New York police. His sister was New York police. And they're immigrants from Sicily, and then went into law enforcement. And then he started working in finance, and then later had a late-in-life switch to the FBI and law enforcement. One of the things that makes his family so interesting, and got more press coverage than his own death, was his sister being arrested and going to trial for putting out a hit on her ex-husband. His sister, Valerie Cincinnati, a New York police officer, was dating this one guy. I'll have to pull up his name. Give me 1 second to do that.
I think it was her ex-husband while they were going through a divorce around the same time that her brother died as well. So, I mean, you have the sister getting arrested on a murder-for-hire charge at the same time that her brother was, allegedly either, died from a gun wound in Austin, Texas. But his sister was making headline news within a month after that.
Oh, so it was after. She got arrested after this.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like he's distraught. My sister's going to prison. Let me kill myself.
No, he passed in June, and she got arrested in July.
That's pretty recent.
Yeah, and her defense attorney has made a bunch of public statements saying that was her best friend. She was losing her mind because of her best friend's death. And I don't know. When you think of something like the Vegas shooting where that guy's brother also got into trouble right after, it's hard not to make connections where there's no connections on a story like this. This could just be one crazy family all getting into crazy shenanigans. But seeing these things back to back makes you go like, dang, what happened? What happened to that family that summer? That seems like the worst summer in Cincinnati history.
There were theories that Valerie herself had put the hit out on him. However, I don't think that a local cop in New York who's getting busted on putting a hit out on her ex-husband has the acumen to successfully hire hitmen and kill an FBI agent.
Yeah.
It seems a little top shelf.
Okay,
If you're an NYPD police officer and you don't know someone that will kill for you, it must be your first day on the job.
oh yeah, they got professionals, man. You know, they got Blackwater guys, man. They got real professionals, you know, and they get paid a lot of money too. Now, what about his widow, kids?
So another thing is directly after his death, he has, I believe it's 3 kids, but there was a GoFundMe put up by another agent that he had worked with on other cases that raised $50,000 for his wife and kids overnight on a GoFundMe. And that's something that's weird to me too, that the GoFundMe was more popular than like a story on this. It's just, I don't know, another, again, kind of black hole on information. But if you look into the 2 people that put it on, they were just agents that he worked with that, you know, also have histories in going from either law or finance to FBI later in life.
Yeah, his wife's name is not listed anywhere on the obituary.
Yeah, I mean, it's just hard to find info
Do you
on
know
this
his
guy.
wife's name?
I could find it somewhere online, but
Okay, now
I don't
back
have
to
it
the
in the
GoFundMe
doc
for
in
a
front of
second.
me.
Back to the GoFundMe. They raised $50K. What are the increments? Are they small donations or one big $49,000 donation?
A lot of like 200 to 500 donations that all say something like, "We love the FBI. The FBI is close to our house." It kind of gives off the idea that it was shared on like FBI social medias.
Gotcha. Has anybody checked in, because this last name is pretty uncommon, to see if there were any lawsuits related to this, either in D.C. or in Austin? Someone trying to receive some kind of compensation?
Nothing that we've seen, because I mean, I don't have, you know, I'm no hacker. I just use DuckDuckGo and Google, try to find stuff on there, and I wasn't able to see anything. Were you, Sam?
No.
Mm-mm.
Well, what you do is you find out the county where the incident took place, and then you go to the county court website, and then you can search by litigants' names, by the plaintiffs' names, and it'll come right up. That's not going to come up with Google. That's not going to come up with a Google search. You got to go to the...
Nothing on that for Travis County.
Oh, you don't have that over in Travis County?
Oh, no, I mean, there was nothing on him in Travis County. When I was trying to find information on, like, a police report, I did all that whenever
you check the courts,
the
too, to see if there's any civil lawsuits.
For Travis County, yeah, there's nothing. But
That's
where he's from, there very well could be.
Yeah. Now, what, any other relatives, brothers and sisters besides the hitmen?
I think it was just the one sister, the NYPD cop. And then I found some interesting Twitter posts from his friends that really just talk about him as a guy and how much he did stuff around the community there. So, I mean...
Did you try and contact any of them and try and find out what he's up to?
I didn't reach out to any of those people. They're all public people, too. Definitely get someone to reach out to him for sure.
It seems like there's a lot of stuff here you can work on to find out some info on these guys. But as far as this goes, man, it's just like really... It's a total mystery, right?
Yeah, as far as I can tell. I mean, again, when something like this happens, when Epstein kills himself, when, you know, a union leader in South America dies, you expect to see some sort of expose a few years later. And we're 5 years deep and there's no new information. So
there's no comment from the FBI.
And there's still no comment from the FBI about this event. Nothing. I mean, as of, yeah, that was in 2020. Yeah, still no comment from the FBI. It's crazy. I think there should be enough interest in this case to get someone to investigate this. Get a real journalist, get a real private investigator, interview people that worked at Container Bar, find the people that are at the event, and figure out
I'll
what's
tell you
going
this.
on. At least get some better leads.
Yeah, there's people who listen to this show that are obsessively...
Some real gumshoes.
Oh, my God. Forget it, man. Forget it.
If you're listening to this and you can find new information, you're welcome on Sam and I's pod. That's the whole point of the podcast. If you're one of those gumshoes that got a little bit deeper underneath the rock than we could, we'd love to hear any information that you have.
Yeah, and once again, the podcast is called the Bad News Podcast. JT Kelly, God's favorite comedian, and Sam Castillo comedy. The Bad News Podcast comes out every Monday afternoon with brand new content. What do you have coming up on there, your new podcast there?
Well, the Black Israelite episode is coming out pretty soon. We're having them in the studio soon. We just did an episode on Slab City. We had someone that lived out there come and talk to the studio about their time living at that little anarchist community.
So when you the Black Israelites, you can actually have them come to your studio?
Yeah, we're trying to decide if we want to Skype them in or if we can have them. They want to come in person, which does make me feel a little uneasy.
Yeah, because they're a very intimidating bunch, man. When I lived in New York, you had to walk by those guys. It was very, very intimidating.
They scream at me to kiss their shoes. They say,
right.
"Kiss my feet, bow down and kiss my feet." And that's what they got my attention. I said, "Okay, what do you guys believe?" I said, "Why do you want me to kiss your feet? What's going on here? This is wild."
Well, there's actually videos of people kissing their feet.
Oh yeah. I think that's hilarious. I mean, I could be tempted to kiss someone's feet if it made me laugh.
That's right. You guys
in the right context, I could see myself kissing a Black Israelite's foot, having a good time.
So, JT, man, you're no stranger to cults, though, are you? Because
no,
tell me off the air there. You've been working on an article for the BBC?
Yeah, there's this podcaster that works for the BBC. Crooked Media, I think, is who he's actually with. But he's been talking to people that were a part of a Maoist cult I was a part of in my early 20s, where we all just got into just weird ideas, weird time, Wanted to have a real cultural revolution, got people to wear dunce caps, the whole kit and caboodle. But the leader ended up going to prison, as they do, and a bunch of scandals came out about all of them, just trying to get free labor from everybody. Good time to be alive.
I don't know if you guys are aware of my background in the Lower East Side of New York City as a teenager with the Yippies, the Youth International Party.
No, I didn't know you were involved with them.
Oh, yeah, man. Yeah. As a teenager in high school, I got involved with the Yippies. They were all hooked up with High Times Magazine, all the High Times Magazine guys. I actually lived down there at Yippie headquarters on Bleecker Street, 9 Bleecker Street, and then 10 Bleecker Street. We had the nightclub at 10 Bleecker Street across the street, the Tom Forsyth Multimedia Center. So I was a real radical activist in my youth. Now, and I was kind of a cult too, At the time, it was run by Dana Beal, who's a very, very intense guy. Back in those days, he was insanely intense.
Mm-hmm.
But what attracted you as a young man to this? Was it the politics first, the economics, or was it the camaraderie of the group?
Oh, a little bit of all of it. I grew up Christian fundamentalist, homeschooled by like Jesus camp style Christians. And so I left that, and I kind of just found the most extreme opposite of that immediately just by meeting a guy on the bus that was nice to me. And he was fresh out of the Occupy movement, and we pretty quickly, just started up a little study group. And that study group ended up being controlled by a guy named Dallas. And this guy named Dallas just laid down – he was just the best at talking. Everyone was really good at listening to him. It was hard to argue with him. So he kind of just became the de facto chairman of the communist organization. And I didn't have any friends. I had just gotten, the life nearly beaten out of me by a drug addict. I got curb stomped. My jaw was broken in 4 places. And so, I was essentially just a scared teenager. I was 19 or 20 at the time. And these guys, they were going to get justice for everybody. And that's what they talked about. They talked about, justice worldwide and people working together. And, sounded nice. Sounded real nice. Sounded perfect for me at the time.
And what year was this?
2014, 2013, 2014.
When was Occupy again? It was such a blur.
2009-ish, is that right?
Yeah, I
it
guess
was
you're
in
right.
2009.
Yeah,
like from 2009, and then I think the final camps were probably 2012, 2013-ish.
Yeah.
That's when you really saw the last of those guys camping out on city halls and stuff like that.
Yeah. Back in Las Vegas, this couple called the Millers, they were part of the Occupy movement, and then they were part of that Million Mask March too.
Mm-hmm.
And then they sold all their belongings. They moved to Las Vegas to live in this motel where they became police informants too. That's a whole other story. Then they became part of that Bundy Ranch movement. Okay, they went up there. Okay, and this is the guy, Mr. Miller. I forget his first name. Is the guy who started the whole rumor up there about the drone attack was coming, and it caused the big standoff between the Oath Keepers and the 3%er, or the 1%ers, the 3%ers, whatever they are. It was standoff with guns up there, and these guys were behind the whole thing. So then the story goes, they get kicked out of Bundy Ranch. They go back to their motel down in town in Las Vegas. And one day they load up a shopping cart with weapons, walk 3 miles in the Las Vegas heat, get into a Cece's Pizza and get the drop on 2 cops in uniform. They ambush these 2 cops somehow with this shopping cart full of weapons and a flag, okay? Then they go to Walmart, okay, and they shoot a gun in the air and it says, the revolution is starting, right? They shoot a gun in the air and they wind up getting killed by the cops inside that Walmart. But even that's shady as hell, too, because, when you walk into Walmart and you see the video on that TV set of your face on that video when you walk in, right?
Oh, yeah.
The video they released was like the moon landing of 1969. It was black and white and grainy, and everybody's hopping around in slow motion, Oh, God. So anyway, that's one of my... That was a real cover-up case back in Vegas. They didn't even have any kind of, what do you call it, ceremonies or parades or anything for 2 dead cops in Las Vegas. Are you kidding me? Normally there's like a month's worth of parades and stuff, right? And memorial ceremonies and stuff like that. So this guy comes out of Occupy. And now, what was the plan that you guys were going to do in this Red Guard? It was going to be like elect candidates through the political process? It was armed revolution? What was your theory there?
Protracted People's War was the goal. The goal was to create community groups that you could, essentially recruit communists from and build up people as communists into a clandestine communist organization that pulled the strings of these front groups so that, ultimately you could build a people's army. By the time they had like a bunch of members and people that were actually like split up into groups like that, I was really out of the organization and just a guy that shared their stuff on Facebook. But I was an early adopter. I was one of the first people in the organization back when it was a really low barrier of entry, back before the clandestine stuff. And so I saw them kind of develop this strategy in real time on how they could apply the thought of who they called Chairman Gonzalo, the leader of Shining Path, a communist organization in Peru in the 90s, to the conditions of America today. That was their overall goal, was to have a protracted people's war through guerrilla warfare, that not today, but 100 years from now. That was the long-term goal of this organization is, hey, in 100 years, if we consistently grow the numbers, we can start a war.
100 years, huh? Okay.
Yeah, they always used to say, let's see the beginning of revolution in our lifetime. That was their motto.
Yeah, I do agree that, like the Democrats and the Republicans, they target kids in high school, and they start grooming their candidates from there. And I think the left needs to, the serious left needs to do the same kind of thing. A great avenue is the speech and debate network throughout the country. These kids who run for speech and debate stuff. Very talented.
I was involved in that in homeschool stuff. I watched a lot of homeschoolers rise up in the right-wing world from speech and debate, JSA, and stuff like that.
That's right. Yeah, my daughter was she was president and captain of the what was that, LD? Yeah, Lincoln Douglas. Yeah, LD. She was the president of the thing, and she took her team to nationals. And then the team she trained, they went to nationals too. So it was great for her, man. Now, what about this Red Guard? Are they still around today? It hasn't been 100 years yet.
No, I mean, I got bad news. They didn't have their revolution. They lost. They never. They disbanded. I think totally and entirely, probably in 2021 or 2022. And now you can check it out if you go to Maoist Cult Exposed. There's a website about people's experience. I mean, I knew a guy who got involved when he was 17 or 18 and, had a good family and was convinced to quit school, convinced to change identities, convinced to live in a house where he worked and, had paid the rent of a communist so that this person didn't have to work, which is just so funny. And then and then fell in love with someone else in the movement and then had to move to a different city because falling in love was preventing the work that they were supposed to do. So they found themselves, essentially like a 25-year-old dude or 25-year-old dude kind of looking around being like, dang, I spent my entire young adulthood trying to build a revolution and a cult, and now they're just now piecing their life back together. I talked to him pretty recently. It's pretty wild. Pretty wild how I didn't really go that hard for it, to be honest. These people went way harder. People that abandoned their entire families and friends to, study Mao.
So did you go go live with them too?
No, I never went that hard in it. I remember one time Dallas, who was like the leader, he asked me if I would go to the swamp with him. And I was like, what's the swamp? And it's where they would go and do arms training. And they'd stay on a ranch and do arms training out there. And I was like, dang, I'm so happy I didn't go. That seems like the type of thing that like makes you end up in a Netflix doc. Like, that seems crazy. But to be honest, at that time, I kind of respected it. I was like, wow, at least they're brave. That's crazy. Good job, guys. But I'm not really about that life.
Yeah, Netflix doc. People wind up in prison for 40 years. Netflix doc. Are you kidding me?
I read this book called Heavy Radicals that was written by historians that talk about how the FBI infiltrated the Maoist movement of the 70s and the 80s. And when I went and saw him speak at this anarchist bookstore, probably in like 2015 or 2016, he was like, hey, if any of you guys are in a revolutionary organization, you guys should know that there's definitely informants in it. And that just really affected me. So I was like, oh, I'll never do anything illegal. I'm too scared.
Oh, yeah, man. It's a cesspool of informants. And we saw it, man. We saw it with our own eyes.
What's even crazier is I talked to this reporter specifically about the organization I was in, the small little organization in Austin. Yeah. And we had spread out organizations in L.A. and Kansas and Pittsburgh. And after the organization collapsed in 2022, these Germans came out to Pittsburgh to interview the people that were former communist about why that project failed. And so it kind of had this picture of like, oh, wow, this was just an organization under a bigger banner that's international. I don't even know about those people. It's crazy.
And so then what about your political? Do you cover any political stuff on the Bad News podcast?
Yeah, we do. Because, I mean, I spent my early 20s, in engaging in, some good Marxist literature and then also a lot of, like, very fringe, insane stuff. And then Sam's just, like, a very well-read guy when it comes to, like, I call you, like a grown-up Naomi Klein fan. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like in 2006 you were reading Naomi Klein. Is that fair?
Yeah, unfortunately in high school I was reading The Intercept. I got in a little too early for my own good.
So, I don't know. I was telling you before the show where it's like I grew up a fundamentalist Christian and then I immediately became, essentially a fundamentalist Maoist. And so when people ask me like my political ideology now, I'm like, dude, I have a wife I love and I like to smoke meat on the weekends. Like, I'm not even registered to vote. Yeah. I really don't think guys like me should get involved in politics. Like, I don't think the goal should be more easily radicalized young men should get involved in politics. I think the goal should be like, yeah, dude, you should worry about grilling. Should worry about smoking meat in the backyard.
So Sam Castillo, what about you? What is it like having been a co-host with this this red pinko communist? JT Kelly?
It's never boring. Yeah. It's never boring. I'll come in with a bunch of stories. I try to find like one story that has like cultural significance in like that week. Last week, we the episode that's coming out this week, we were covering the new Titan submersible. Or now it's called the Triton submersible. I don't know if you remember last summer when the Titan submersible imploded. Yes. They were a bunch of billionaires who were trying to explore the Titanic. Well, a separate group of billionaires sent a remote ship. They had the great idea of just having an unmanned vessel go down there and bring like little relics from the Titanic. And as a result of that, a new group of billionaires, the lead one coming from Ohio, created a new company, not named Titan, but called the Triton, as it's going to be the third Titan ship to go down there, manned. And it's never deep scientists who are going down there. It's always one guy who seems to know how to drive a boat, and then a bunch of billionaires that I guess want to die along with the story in this like chosen martyrdom. And that's like we try to find like a cultural relevance of why people are obsessed with a moment like Titanic and why they're choosing to repeat history itself. And then we'll look at a new story locally. The other story I'm very proud of us covering was the case of a guy who flew his own personal plane into the IRS building in Austin, Texas. Yes. Andrew John Stock. He flew his own personal Cigna, like a single engine plane, into the IRS building because he was getting falsely audited, and unfortunately passed. But that kind of jihadism, like domestically, I guess if you want to describe it, because it happened where we live, we try to make sense of stories that happened in the past, and then we try to make sense of a recent local cultural story like the Titan one. And then just winding up JT, he just makes every episode.
Up. I was born to be radicalized. There's nothing that doesn't work me up. Have you heard this story of the guy that flew his plane into the IRS head?
I have, because I'm really into that kind of stuff. You ever see the documentary called Cul-de-sac in San Diego? The guy who stole, he had a gold mine in his backyard. They were all smoking meth and using meth there. He had all his meth buddies tweaking and digging in his coal mine, and it's gold mine. And the city wouldn't let him do the gold. You heard the story?
No, we haven't heard this story.
You can still find it. The video is out there. It was very hard to find for a long time, but I just rewatched it just recently, so I know it's still out there. Because the filmmaker has passed away. Only made 2 films, and this is a great film. Man, it was doing great work. I wanted to interview him. The guy steals a tank from the local National Guard, and he drives it up and down the street, destroying the whole town. Okay, it's just like that other guy who took the tractor and he
Oh, the killdozer.
Yeah, the killdozer. Yeah. Yeah. See, I would love to do something like that.
That's really. The thing is when we were talking about the podcast, it was like it's so hard not to be sympathetic with the guy that's just fed up. You know?
He wrote this amazing manifesto that we have clipped up. That's where he calls out the big brother. He calls out the actual lettering is quoting Orwell all throughout it. He's fed up at the disillusion of the middle class. He flew his plane in 2010, so he's crying out about the bailout of the bankers and the funding of the war on terror and leaving the middle class to die in America. And that's why he was falsely audited. And he's an upper middle class guy. He's a guy who owns his own plane. To have aviation as a hobby, you can't be poor.
That's not a working class hustle.
No, but he's wealthy enough to where he can have a plane, but grounded enough to see the class warfare happening, and that's why he decided to pass away and die the way he decided to die. So, the stories we cover are grim like that, but we do it from a perspective of just comics, people who want to make you laugh, which is the only way to look at it now, right?
I think the episode that we released last was just going over all the different times of stolen valor.
I love that. Yeah.
Oh, well, no, to be clear, when we stole valor.
Yeah, stolen a lot of valor. It's funny. The funniest thing about stealing valor is it's like a victimless crime. No one loses when you steal valor. You only win. It's just a win. It's just a win. I remember getting free drinks on an airplane, pretending like I was saying the Army. I might have even said Marines, dude. I probably said Marines, my overweight ass, just saying.
As we were flying from California to Texas, each time zone, by the Rocky time zone, he's like, actually, I was a Green Beret.
But wait a second, weren't you afraid you were going to run into one of those guys with the YouTube camera, stolen valor, stolen valor? You were worried about that?
I would just drop my hat.
What's your MOS?
Right,
What's your MOS?
Yeah, what's my MOS? I'd say I was a cook.
Yeah, I love that guy too, Don Shipley, who exposes the Navy SEALs. I watch all that guy too. But I tell you, man, there's nothing like a good manifesto. Okay, I will read anybody's manifesto. But did you happen to read the guy who set himself on fire in front of the Trump trial in New York?
Oh my gosh, we have an episode about him because I was reading his work when he first published it. Oh, really? He published his stuff on, was it Medium?
He had a Substack.
Oh, and it was fantastic, Ed. His early research specifically on the way he was able to connect different circles of wealth was fantastic research. And then by drop 3, it was have you read everything, Max, his stuff?
Not everything, just the final manifesto and his Instagram page. I just happened to be watching YouTube Live when he did it,
Really?
Oh yeah.
Crazy.
Oh yeah.
You've seen the self-immolation. That was all the rage this winter. This was the I feel like January, December, that was the immolation,
People
season.
Can't afford
it went from
heat.
hot girl summer to immolation fall.
Yeah. Oh boy. So listen, we only got a couple of minutes left, man. My God bless this guy. The poor guy set himself on fire, man. I read his manifesto, and basically the last one that I read, and I understand too, it was the death of his mother that really set him off.
Yeah.
Was basically, well, look, capitalism sucks. I just found out, and I guess that switch in your brain, you just can't face it,
You have to read the Ponzi papers, the stuff that he was releasing before he self-immolated, like a year or two before. I was following him when they first dropped. I'd send screenshots to Sam because they were just partially unhinged and then partially just fantastic points about the way that money moves around this world, and specifically the snooker organization in England.
Right. We have an episode devoted to this whole story. If someone checks out our Spotify YouTube page, the name of the episode is called Snooker Worldwide. I believe it was our 8th or 9th episode. And we look at snooker. I don't know if you've ever heard of the billiard. It's a billiards game. Yeah. Right. Okay. So this guy uncovered a child trafficking ring inside the European Snooker League.
Max did, the guy that set himself on fire.
The man who immolated himself. And did a lot of good journalism, and then unfortunately
the CIA shot him with the schizophrenia gun.
Yeah.
That's a shame because I kind of dismissed him, man. When I guess I was kind of shook up from watching him, the fire.
You read the Simpsons manifesto, right? The one where he's painting everything through the Simpsons.
No, I did not see that.
Okay.
Oh yeah, he writes a whole manifesto.
That's a good one too.
Going through the Matt Groening cartoon.
Yeah, it's rough because he clearly is just a lost, mentally ill guy. But his early work, the Ponzi papers,
a veteran,
fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, you look at his early stuff. He had a wife, a beautiful wife, man, a nice wedding, boy. Anyway, we're talking to JT Kelly. Yeah, right. We're talking to JT Kelly, the God's favorite comedian, and his partner in crime over here, Sam Castillo. You can find him at Sam Castillo Comedy. Their podcast that I'm on, you can go there and do listen to the interview I did with them. The Bad News Podcast. It's on Spotify, YouTube. Comes out every Monday. You want to meet these characters in person, maybe set them on fire. You can go to the East Austin Comedy Club at September 18th or Creek and Cave in Austin. Guys, thank you so much. And once again, I really want to thank you. It was so kind, such kind words when you were interviewing me there before I came
we're big
on.
fans.
Well, thank you.
I've been plugging into your podcast since probably like 2014.
Yeah, that's pretty much when it started. Yeah, 2013.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Big fan.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you so much for having us, Ed.
No, thank you. Good night.